Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. So we are going to begin our Islam study circle. Starting off with the first topic, which is the Quran, and the verse that we're going to discuss today is from Surah Shura, and these are four verses from 40 to 43, and the title that I've given to them is Forgiveness or Forgiving Others. The text of the Quran reads, وَجَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ سَيِّئَةٌ مِثْلُهَا فَمَنْ عَفَا وَأَصْلَحَ فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الظَّالِمِينَ وَلَمَنِ انتَصَرَ بَعْدَ ظُلْمِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَا عَلَيْهِم مِّن سَبِيلٍ إِنَّمَا السَّبِيلُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ يَظْلِمُونَ النَّاسَ وَيَبْغُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ وَلَمَنْ صَبَرَ وَغَفَرَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ لَمِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. And the revenge of an evil is an evil equal to it. Yet he who forgave and reconciled, his reward rests with God. Indeed, he does not like wrongdoers. And those who take revenge after they were oppressed, and there is no blame on them. The blame is only on them who oppress people and are rebellious in the land without justification. It is for these people for whom there is a grievous penalty. And indeed, he who exercised restraint and forgave, then this is from among the matters of resolve. So, dear viewers, as you can see, the Quran has very effectively put across this point that as far as taking revenge is concerned, if you have been hurt by someone, if someone has damaged you in any way, then you can take an equal amount of revenge. This is something which will never be called an oppression. It will not be called something of a wrongdoing. However, the Quran urges us that if we are able to forgive people in spite of the harm they have caused us, in spite of the evil that they have done to us, then the Quran says that this is much more rewarding. And as you can see, the words are فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. A person who forgave other people, in spite of the fact that the person whom he forgave was the person who had really done something wrong. The Quran says, if you forgive such a person, وَأَصْلَحَ, and you reconcile that with that person, and you try to make peace with that person, the Quran says, فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ, then the reward of such a deed rests with God. God is going to amply reward a person who is going to forgive others. So forgiveness, my dear viewers, is something that we need to practice. It is something that does not come to us very naturally. We have to make an effort for that, but then we have to realize that this is something that we have to work for. We have to realize that forgiveness is something that we always want from God. So if we want forgiveness from God, I think it is but natural to forgive other people and make ourselves worthy of being forgiven. So to forgive, to forego, and forget, these are some beautiful principles of a collective life. Yes, there are instances in which you just cannot forgive a person for the evil that he has caused you, for the consternation that he has caused you, and you think that such a person must be avenged. Yes, that is something that can be done. And there are people who are incorrigible. There are people with whom, until you really take revenge from them, they will never mend their ways. So there are exceptions, and precisely for this reason, the Quran has left us with this choice that if you want, yes, you can take revenge, but it has urged us that if you forgive that person, if you show that magnanimity of your heart, if you are gracious enough to let that fault go, and all that you do is just meet that person with a smiling face, not only forgive him, but as you can see from other places in the Quran, that you are good to that person. You forgive him from your heart, and at the same time, you do what is good to that person. You communicate that person in a way that the person realizes that this person, in spite of being afflicted with such a bad thing from me, he is still smiling when he sees me. So this is what the Quran says, in Nazalika Lamin Azbil Umur. This is something which is really, really a matter of great determination. It's a matter of great resolve. So you see, the Quran says that people who oppress other people without any justification, are rebellious in the land, they are the people who blame, not people who avenge a mistake that was committed against them, or a sin that was committed against them. And for such people who are unjustifiably arrogant and rebellious in the land, the Quran says, Ulaika lahum azabun alim. For them, there is a grievous penalty. But then it says at the end, Walaman sabara wa ghafara. Inna zalika lamin azmil umur. That if you are able to show patience, exercise restraint, then this is something, I mean, as a result of this restraint, you are able to forgive that person. And Almighty says that this is a matter of great resolve. One thing that you might have noticed in this verse is that forgiveness is actually held in tandem with patience. So it is patience that makes you a forgiving person. Otherwise, if we are impatient, we immediately react, we immediately or impulsively show our response. That forgiveness is going to come much later, and maybe after our own impulsive reaction has caused a lot of harm. So forgiveness and patience, they go hand in hand with one another. If you are patient with the other person, if you know that whatever has happened because of a certain reason, and come what may, you have to be at the giving end. You have to be a person who is going to magnanimously show your forgiveness. Then it becomes easier for you to forgive other people. Now let's move on to the next part of our study circle, which is the next segment. And here now we're going to talk about the hadith of the day, and that is a hadith that you can see on your screens. It is a hadith taken from the Al-Jami al-Sahih of Imam Muslim, and it relates to our dealings with our parents. So it says, An Abi Hurairah qala rajulun Ya Rasulullah man ahaqqun nasa bi husn suhba qal ummuk summa ummuk summa ummuk summa abuk summa adnaka adnaka. It's a beautiful narrative, and how closely it matches the Quran. So Abu Huraira, he relates from the Prophet that a person asked, O Messenger of God, who amongst people is the most deserving of my good treatment? The Prophet replied, your mother. And the person again asked, and he again said, your mother. And the person asked for a third time, and the Prophet's reply was once again, your mother. So 3 times he asked, and 3 times he said, it's your mother. And then the 4th time he asked, he said, your father. And then he said, other relatives, according to the principle of those who are nearest to you, they deserve the most good treatment. So al-aqrab fal-aqrab, which means the nearest and then the next nearest. But what we need to understand here is how the Quran elevates the status of a mother, and how it infers with it this supremely advanced and status, in which it says that 3 times a mother has thrice a right on a person than his father. And I think it is just befitting if you realize that there are 3 roles which only a mother plays and the father does not play. So a mother carries the child in her womb. She delivers the child from her womb, and then she suckles the child. So these are the 3 stages that goes on every human being, and these are all confined to a mother. And the way she does that, of course, we all know that it is a matter of great resolve and determination. She has to pass through a lot of hardships, difficulties, problems, ailments, a lot of trips to the doctor, a lot of discomfort, but still she goes through these 3 phases, three labors. The one that she carries a child in her own womb for 9 months is something which is really something that is telling on her health. And then it's no easier task to deliver a child, especially when it is done in the natural way. And finally, suckling a child is again something that all of us know, all mothers know, that it's also a very exacting exercise. So this is where a mother's role it really is something which on these 3 occasions, it overshadows the role of the father. But of course, this doesn't mean that the father does not have his own role and he is not deserving of any good treatment. Yes, after this 3 or thrice the weight that the mother carries, the Prophet said, yes, after that, your father. So this good treatment is something you can clearly see is because of the sacrifices which the mothers do, and of course, fathers also do in their own life. So once a child comes into this world, he is nourished and nurtured by both parents. And again, the father is also responsible for many things. he also has his own share of sacrifice, and he too is deserving of that good treatment. And this good treatment, the biggest thing that we have to understand in this good treatment is to show politeness and kindness to our parents, not be rude to them, not be impetuous to them. Always talk to them in a polite way. Even if we have to differ with them, there is a method to it. You can always differ with your parents, but it has to be in a polite way. You have to remember that they are more experienced. They have much more experience of this world than the child would have. So if they say something, we must lend our ears. We must listen to them intently. And yes, in spite of listening to them intently, there could be the situation that we might not agree with them. But then this agreement, as I said, has to be in a very, very gracious way, in a very, very polite and a gentle way, so that the parents also realize that we have been listened, and only after being listened have we been differed from. And again, this good treatment, as the narrative you can see, goes for the rest of our relatives as well. All our blood relations after our parents, they are also equally deserving of this good treatment. And it is basically in the fitness of things that we have to always realize that relationship building is one of our priorities in life. Human beings and relationships with those human beings, they are one of the most prized possessions that we should always look up to. They should be amongst our top priorities. And who better than the personality of the Prophet himself, urging us forward, urging us on, that yes, life is something in which all of us need to realize the importance of our parents and, of course, the importance of other relatives. Let's now move on to the next segment of our study circle, and this is Bible that we're going to study. We're going to study the Gospel of Mark, chapter number 12, verses 41 to 44. And this is something from Jesus himself, a translation of what he said. So it starts off by, and Jesus took a seat by the place where the money was kept and saw how the people put money into the boxes. And a number who had wealth put in much. Of course, this would mean that there were people who had put a lot of wealth in the boxes. And there came a poor widow, and she put in little bits of money, 2 little bits of money, just 2 small coins, which make a farthing. So farthing is again a unit of money which was used in those times. And he made his disciples come to him, and he said to them. So Jesus saw a poor widow putting in 2 coins in that box, and he made it a point to call his disciples, and look what he said to them. He said, "Truly, I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are putting money into the box, because they all put in something out of what they had no need for. But she, out of her need, put in all she had, even all her living." So you see how beautifully Prophet Jesus has told us that a person or a widow, she just had those 2 coins with her, and they were not spare. She needed them for her living, as the verses tell us. But the rest of the people, they were rich, and they were only putting into that box what they could spare easily, what they could easily, give other people without infringing upon their own needs. But this poor widow, she had whatever she had, she put it in that box, and Jesus said that her money, which might be just 2 coins, it outweighs maybe hundreds of coins which others might have put in, because she sacrificed her need, and they did only what they did. It was only give what they did not need, what was spare to those from their needs. So you see, the lesson which these verses teach us is that at times, if we have little, we must not shy away. At times, what we have is our essential need. We must not shy away from that essential need, because what happens is that there are times in which you are afforded this opportunity to experience God. And this is an opportunity in which you can really experience God, because at times when you sacrifice your own needs and help out other people, it does happen that God Almighty helps you out right at the next moment, and out of nowhere comes something that can really elate you, that can really make you rejoice. Because if you gave those 2 pennies because you had just those 2 pennies. God at times returns it manifold to us. And as the Quran has said at one place, يَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ, that He gives from a direction that you could not have even imagined that money could have come through this channel. So this is an object lesson for all of us, that we have to spend, we have to care for other people. Life is not just living about our own lives. Yes, we have to put attention, we have to pay attention to our own lives, we have to pay attention to our needs, but at the same time, we have to look at the people around us, look at the deprived, look at those people who are not at ease, who are miserable, who need our help, and especially people who have that self-esteem in which they were not going to come forward and ask for money. It is we who have to reach out to them. They are not going to ask. They might go to bed while being in empty stomach, and they would not sacrifice their self-esteem as a result. But as we go across in life, go on in life, we do realize that there are such people around us who, because of this self-esteem, they are people who need our help. And the only way that we can help them is to tune our eyes, to tune our ears, that these people do exist. And above all, we have to realize that whatever we have for other people, even if it's a small amount, we must not shy away, because that small amount can make the other person's life, and it can really make that person's day. So now we're going to come to the 4th segment of our study circle, which is usually a moderated session. Mariam does moderate this session. It is about a discussion that we often do on a contemporary issue. And the issue that we're going to discuss today relates to our social media. It says that the advantages and disadvantages of social media. So this is a life that all of us are living. We are passing through a situation in which all of us have access to social media, not only our own selves, we have our children who have this access, we have other people around us, and at times we really get frustrated. But social media, we would all agree, has tremendous advantages, and it has tremendous disadvantages as well. We have to create a balance between its use. So over to you, Mariam, if you could moderate this session, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We already have a few raised hands, so we'll start off with Shaban Ansari.
सोशल मीडिया मेरे ख्याल में एक ऐसी खिड़की है जिसमें हम मतलब घर बैठे बहुत दूर तक देख सकते हैं. वहां से हम बहुत से एडवांटेजेस भी हैं, उसके फायदे भी हैं कि हम इल्म भी हासिल कर सकते हैं किसी कॉज के लिए भी, और बिजनेस भी कर सकते हैं. बहुत सारी चीजें ज़ाहिर है कि वो अब सामने हमारे आती रहती हैं. डिसएडवांटेजेस भी बहुत सारे हैं उसके, जिसमें ये कि हम आमतौर पे जो है वो दूर बैठे लोगों के साथ हमारा कनेक्शन है, और जो साथ बराबर में बैठे हैं और कमरे में बैठे हैं उनसे हम दूर होते चले जा रहे हैं. इवन कि हम विजिट के लिए भी जब कहीं जाते हैं तो जो जिसके घर जाते हैं उन समेत, मेजबान समेत, सब अपने अपने मोबाइल लेके लगे हुए होते हैं. कोई आपस में फिर इंटरेक्शन खत्म होता जा रहा है, और बाज दफा तो ऐसे लगता है कि शायद बच्चों को कन्वर्सेशंस करनी ही खत्म हो जाएगी, उनको बस लिखना ही आएगा, बोलना उनको आना खत्म हो जाएगा, ऐसे लगता है बात दफा. लेकिन उसमें भी जाहिर है कि हम खुद सेट कर सकते हैं ये चीजें कि हम जब कहीं मिलने जाएं तो वो रखवा दें मोबाइल और कहें कि नहीं, इसको इस्तेमाल नहीं करना बस. लेकिन मैं जो 2 चीजों को अहमियत देती हूँ इसमें, एक चीज ये है कि इसमें जो शेयरिंग का कंटेंट होता है उसको मैं बहुत अहमियत देती हूँ कि उसको हमें बहुत सीरियसली लेना चाहिए कि कोई चीज अगर हम शेयर कर रहे हैं तो वो हमारे आसार बन रहे हैं, वो हमारे शेयर करने से पहले वो हमारे फरिश्ते हमारे अमाल में लिख रहे हैं. और इसी तरह खास तौर पे कमेंट करने में भी हमारी कौम बड़ी ही जालिम है, तो उसमें भी खुदा बेखौफ होके कमेंट्स नहीं करने चाहिए, और उसको भी ये समझना चाहिए कि ये हमारे आसार हैं जो कल क़यामत के दिन ये फरिश्ते जो हैं ये अल्लाह के सामने पेश करेंगे, ये हमारी गवाहियां होंगी. तो इसलिए मैं इन पर ज्यादा तवज्जो देती हूँ और खुद भी इसका ख्याल रखती हूँ. तो इसलिए यही 2 पॉइंट जो है वो मैं आपके सामने मैंने रखे. बाकी तो लोग बताते रहेंगे बाकी सारी चीजें. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
चलिए, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया.
Thank you for sharing. Humayun Majid, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr Shehzad Saleem sahab.
वालेकुम सलाम.
सर, टुडे जो आपने आज डिस्कशन किया कि एडवांटेज एंड डिसएडवांटेज ऑफ सोशल मीडिया, कि सोशल मीडिया इज अ वेरी important weapon for each and every person that we go through different things, and we receive different things, and we are being taught by different things. But different things when we see in the religious perspective, that something without any verification or without any having strong proof, we जैसे कि हम क्या करते हैं कि हम उसको फैला देते हैं. यानी हम ये हमारी भी, it is our social responsibility and our moral obligation. First we have to verify whether this content it is based on merit, it is true, it is based on truth. Then we can other people to make aware about the social factors. That there is also a hadith that kafa bil mar'i kaziban an yuhaddisa bi shay'in ma sami'a. Without any verification, without any authentication, we are supposed to be very vigilant, and we are supposed to be very in this careful that we should not spread the news which is false, which is not based on merit.
Right.
So we will have to serve.
Thank you for that. And this is absolutely correct that one of the disadvantages of social media is that news which is unverified, it's based on hearsay, it is generally forwarded, and it causes a lot of panic at times, it causes consternation around us, and ultimately we just find that it had no basis. So this is our moral responsibility, and as you just said, the Prophet himself was very angry, and he said that it is enough for a person to call a liar, to be called a liar, if he transmits whatever comes his way without verifying. So, kafa bil mare kaziban an yuhaddisa bi kulli ma sami'a, that he, without verifying, transmits information. And this is, of course, a big disadvantage of social media. But then, as I said, the final button is with us. Whether we forward whatever we get is something which is, again, dependent on us. So if other people are being irresponsible, we should always verify what we have in our inbox or in our WhatsApps, and then only forward it if we can verify that. So I see that our first two participants have spoken about mostly about the disadvantages, and I would like people also to share. Obviously, disadvantages are there, but there could be some advantages as well. So let's have the next participant, please.
Thank you. Adil Qureshi, please go ahead.
जी, अस्सलाम वालेकुम, Dr. Shehzad.
Walaikum
So as far as the advantages are concerned, obviously one of the biggest advantage is how it has enabled people to create useful content and actually share it across with other people. We are forming these groups and communities. Actually, right now we are using the social media as we speak. We have gathered here as a part of the people who would like to learn from you, and you are delivering this lecture through social media. So obviously, these are the advantages. And similarly, Al Mawrid, I think, is also making a very good use of that and delivering very extremely useful content. And not just institutions, actually individuals are also starting to do that now. They're actually creating this content, publishing it online, selling it online, adding subscribers, and actually are making some living out of this as well. So another advantage besides that I can think of is the activism, how the voices that represent dissent can actually use this platform to raise their voice against oppression of governments or people. And because it is very hard to ban it, basically, I mean, you can ban television, you can ban you can control some other mediums, but it's very hard to basically regulate or control social media for that matter. So advantages are there, definitely negative advantages are there as well, but I think you wanted to address more around the advantages, so I'll hold my judgment around the negatives and let other people speak.
Right. Yes, and one thing that often bothers parents is the excessive use of social media. So social media has its advantages and disadvantages. That is, we all agree. But one thing is that it is quite addictive. It attracts you so much that you lose track of time. you shirk your responsibilities, and there's so many things that you should have done, your moral obligations, your religious obligations, your social obligations, but because of this social media, you tend to lose track of them. So yes, this is something which is addictive. It is very, I mean, it catches you. And I think one thing that we need to understand is that instead of clamping down on the use of social media, it is always wise to construct something powerful and parallel, which, I mean, can attract a younger lot, or even the elderly, so that they are not always glued to the tube or glued to the social media. For example, I always say this, that one thing that can really help us is the power of creativity. So if we do creative things, if we indulge in our creative hobbies, we can make things, we can draw things, we can produce content, whether it's digital, whether it's audio, visual, whether it's oral, all sorts of creativity. So creativity is also quite addictive. So I think one important area in which our parents need to understand is that when something is available to people or to the children, like air and water, we just cannot clamp it down, because if you start doing it at your homes, something is it's equally available to them when they are not at home. And so instead of being strict, I would always suggest that you have to raise their level of understanding and awareness, and make them addictive to other things which can be much more constructive. And I think this is one area that our parents have to concentrate on. And I do feel that we are falling short here. So let's have our next participant. Yes.
Ahsan, you're up next. Please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम to everyone. मेरे ख्याल में जो सोशल मीडिया है वो घर और स्कूल दोनों ही जगह पे इस्तेमाल हो रहा है. माँ बाप भी इस्तेमाल करते हैं और स्कूल वाले भी अपना सब कुछ अपडेट करने के लिए यूज करते हैं. तो इसके लिए हमें हमारे सोसाइटी में तो चीजें बहुत जल्दी फितना बन जाती हैं और हर ही चीज कुछ दिनों के बाद फितना हो जाती है. बट दैट्स नॉट द ट्रू. हमें जो है सबको मिलके इसके लिए एफर्ट करनी चाहिए, स्कूल से लेके घर के. हमें बच्चों को बचपन से सिखाना चाहिए कि थोड़ा टाइम हम इसके बगैर रह के सीखेंगे. हफ्ते में 2-3 दिन या 4-5 दिन हम इसे इस्तेमाल नहीं करेंगे. देखेंगे कि लाइक हम इसके बगैर भी बहुत सारी चीजें कर सकते हैं. यही प्रैक्टिस स्कूल में भी करानी पड़ेगी कि जी स्कूल के अंदर वो जितना सोशल मीडिया इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, एक वीक ऐसा होना चाहिए जहाँ पे बिल्कुल भी इस्तेमाल नहीं किया जाए. आपको ये भी थोड़ा थोड़ा सिर्फ लाया जाए. 1 महीने, क्योंकि फॉरेन कंट्रीज में तो लोग ये करते हैं 1 महीने के लिए पूरा ऐप डिलीट कर देते हैं कि दे वांट टू मेक देयर सेल्फ कि ये उसके बगैर सरवाइव कर सकते हैं. तो हमें ये कॉन्शियस और एफर्ट करनी पड़ेगी इसके लिए, माँ बाप को भी और स्कूल को भी, छोटे बच्चों को ट्रेन करने के लिए. थैंक यू.
राइट, थैंक यू.
Thank you. Dr. Sahil Anwar, you're next. Please go ahead.
Dr. Saleem, assalamu alaikum. बहुत शुक्रिया. Very stimulating lecture as usual. I will obviously talk about one of the advantages of social media, and this is a personal example, so it's affected me in my life, and I'll keep it in the context of a religious discussion, because obviously this is a religious channel. So for me, one of the biggest advantages of social media is the power to cross-check references in the back of an eyelid. In days gone by, and this is the dilemma of the taqlidi mindset, the mindset that just follow one person, especially in a religious setup. In the days gone by, if you like someone, you're following them, you're obviously reading their literature, you're reading their books. The main form of literature was the books. You're reading their books. You have no resource to cross-check whether they're telling you something is right or wrong. Social media give you the power in a blip of a second to go and cross-reference people. For instance, I follow Dr. Shehzad Saleem. I know he's a great scholar, a sincere man, and I start liking him. Now, if Dr. Shehzad Saleem tells me that, I don't know, take any example. Take the example of Yajuj Majuj. If Dr. Shehzad Saleem tells me that there's a story of Yajuj Majuj and 3 sons of Noah, it doesn't make any sense to me. then I would not be showing Dr. Shehzad Saleem any disrespect by not believing him or by cross-checking his references. This is no disrespect, no matter how much I love Dr. Shehzad Saleem. If something doesn't sit right with me, I don't agree with Dr. Shehzad Saleem, then I am within my rights to go and check his resources. I need to listen to many other people and read their books who have cited the same incident and cross-check whether what Dr. Shehzad Saleem is saying is right or wrong. And social media give me that power. In days gone by, I have to buy 10 books, 20 books, and wouldn't have any time to cross-check so many references. So in an instant of a bat of an eyelid, I can go and cross-check people, not just from your same sect or religion. You can cross-check it against in different religions. What do the Jews say about Yajuj Majuj? What do the Christians say about Yajuj Majuj? In such a big sphere, and social media give you that power. And it takes you away from that taqlidi mindset, that most religious people develop it. And I think every person who calls them a true student of knowledge, a true truth seeker, it's incumbent upon them to do cross references and cross checking rather than just believing someone because they like them. And I think social media gives you that power.
Right. It does give you not only the power, it also gives you the opportunity, which was non-existent maybe a few decades ago. And this is it's a huge advantage. So thank you very much, Dr. Sahel.
Thank you, Dr. Sale. Asif Ali, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Dr. Sahab, Assalamu alaikum. So my opinion on the social media is that itself, social media is not bad at all. It all depends at how you use it. We have entered into a technology revolution after the industrial revolution. So the life or the social fabric across the world has changed a lot because of the social media. And I think there are many examples the other participants have given. So one of the advantages that we are here listening to your lecture, and we are listening to Javed Ahmed Ghamidi Sahab or Mawrid. And there are so many knowledge which we can improve because of the social media. We can connect with our friends who are not physically with us. We are very easy to connect with our family members who are not living very close to us. So these are all advantages. So it all depends on how you use it. So for example, as far as the disadvantage is concerned, the major disadvantage which I see is that across the world, if you see the right group or the right political group has emerged a lot across the globe. So look at an example in Pakistan. I mean, the right group, they shared their opinions or their fake news like anything, and the people keep on sharing. And at one point in time, the populist approach emerged. And that happens even in US or even in Europe or in other parts of the world. So the social fabric. So if you ask me that why the right group is emerging, the one major point or one of the major point is that it's because of the social media. So look, how the use is giving into the wrong hands. And then because of that use, the people across the globe are suffering, not only because of this right group emerging, but also because of the fake news. So I would say that itself, nothing is bad, but it all depends on the human beings, us who are using it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fabia Niazi, you're up next. Please go ahead.
इसके बारे में मैं उस्ताद जी अक्सर कहते हैं कि चीज़ अपनी ज़ात में बुरी नहीं होती, ये उसका इस्तेमाल है जो उसे बुरा कर देता है, तो उसी पर्सपेक्टिव को मैं लेके चलती हूँ। सोशल मीडिया अपनी ज़ात में बुरी चीज़ नहीं है, बस ये उसका इस्तेमाल है जो उसको फ़ायदेमंद या गैर मुफीद बना देता है। और जिस तरह आप देखें हमारे हाथ हैं, ये एक नेमत है, लेकिन ये हुर्मत उसी वक़्त खो देता है जैसे ये इससे हम किसी को नुकसान पहुँचाते हैं, यानी चोरी करके। तो आप सोशल मीडिया को बिल्कुल ऐसे ही ले सकते हैं जैसे एक नेमत है, बिल्कुल हाथ की तरह। पर जैसे ये इस्तेमाल अगर इसका गैर मुफीद हुआ तो वो अपनी कीमत खो देता है चीज़ अपनी। और
राइट।
जैसे रोकने की बात है, मतलब पेरेंट्स कहते हैं कि हम रोक दें अपने बच्चों को, तो आप देखें दुनिया में अच्छाई भी है, बुराई भी है। दुनिया में आने वाले बच्चों को हम रोक नहीं देते कि मत आओ तुम, ये दुनिया बहुत बुरी है। नहीं, हम उसे आने देते हैं, लेकिन हम उसको रहने का गुर सिखाते हैं। बिल्कुल इसी तरह हमें सिखाना चाहिए। यानी हमारे चूँकि
जी।
सोशल मीडिया एक दुनिया बन चुकी है, तो हमें इस दुनिया में रहने का गुर सिखाना चाहिए। और उस्ताज़ कहते हैं कि आप अखलाकी तरबियत कर दें और आप उसको छोड़ दें, मतलब वो बंदा कहीं भी खड़ा होगा तो उसको कोई भी चीज़ उसके से हटा नहीं सकेगी अ अखलाकी अक़दार से। तो मेरा ये ख़्याल है, बल्कि मैंने खुद प्रैक्टिस किया है, हम लोगों की ट्रेनिंग हो रही है, साइकोलॉजी के लेक्चर्स में होती है, तो अखलाकी तरबियत उस्ताद जी भी कर रहे हैं। तो मैंने ये देखा है कि हम इसी ट्रेनिंग की बदौलत सोशल मीडिया हाथ में रखते हुए उन चैनल्स को नहीं खोलते जो अखलाकी लिहाज से बुरे हैं। तो मेरे ख़्याल से हम अपने बच्चों को भी एज़ अ सब्जेक्ट ये टीच करना शुरू कर दें कि इस दुनिया में रहने का गुर क्या है। जी, बस इतना।
ठीक है,
Thank you
बहुत
very
शुक्रिया
much.
आपका।
So, I'd like to add on to a couple more advantages. One of them echoing what Fabia said, where she said that you can control what channels are going to uplift your morals, and so you can see, beforehand. I would say the same applies to people. So, thanks to social media, you can search up people. Especially in the West, it's very easy to find people because a lot of them have a huge social media presence. And so you can look up people and, figure out what are their beliefs, either political or just generally in life. And you can figure out, how far you might want to go ahead with this person in terms of, what things to talk about or what
Right.
topics to maybe avoid. And you can find that, especially in a workplace environment, I find that it's been very useful for me to Google my colleagues and see what they think, just because it helps me maintain a more peaceful relationship with everyone.
Right.
And another thing that I think has been great is that you can network and collaborate with people with ease now, thanks to social media. A lot of them have presences either on Twitter or Facebook.
Right.
And so you could reach out to them if you have any, for example, in my field with science, if I have any scientific questions, I can reach out to someone from a different lab working in a very different part of the world and ask for advice. And social media has made it really easy to do that. So those were a couple more advantages that I wanted to add. And that was it for all the raised hands for the discussion. Should we move on to the Q&A?
Ji, please.
All right. So starting off with Aruba Shafqat. Okay. Adil Qureshi, please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to conclude on one point that I didn't get a chance to speak about, the negatives of the social media. So a lot were already discussed that I had made a note of as well, but one specifically is around the fact that it tends to how should I put it? Now, it tends to portray to other people about the lives of your friends and colleagues which does not really exist. Usually, you tend to post stuff about your life online when something good happens to you, and if something bad happens to you, or if you're going through tough times, usually you do not post about those, right? Now, I think what happens is that when you tend to see timelines of your friends and your acquaintances, you tend to think that what a wonderful life these guys are having, and why am I the one who is going through this, or why am I the one who's going through all of these challenges and have to deal with a lot of difficult people and difficult occasions, and you tend to become slightly worried about why is it only you, and why are the other people having the life of their so I think that it tends to generate these false perceptions about the circle around you. And secondly, on the contrary, for the other people who, for instance, are just gathering, or it tends to create this sort of false sense of that, for instance, you are just gathering or you're just trying to post some stuff on the social media so that you could show off about the, that there are some places where you can dine in which are very expensive that others can't afford. You're trying to show off the, your rides, the kind of cars that you can drive that a normal person cannot drive.
Right.
So that feeling of that sort of showing off, and similarly for the on the other end of it, for the same feeling of depression that it could generate for the other people who are seeing you on social media, I think that is also one of the sort of negative effects that I see of it.
Right. So it becomes a negative impact on people who are not able to do what other people are able to do. Okay. So thank you for that, Adil.
Aruba Shafqat, you're up next. Please go ahead.
सिर्फ एक ही चीज मैंने शेयर करनी थी अबाउट सोशल मीडिया। जैसे कि आपने पहले भी कहा था कि इट्स ऑन अस कि हम कैसे इसको यूज कर सकते हैं, और इसका मतलब जैसे बच्चों को हम ऐसी एक्टिविटीज में सोशल मीडिया के थ्रू ही ऐसी एक्टिविटीज में इन्वॉल्व कर सकते हैं जो कि कंस्ट्रक्टिव हों। तो आई जस्ट वांट टू शेयर दिस वन थिंग कि social media ki hi through probably Instagram or Facebook, one of my 8-year-old cousin got selected for a math Olympiad in Singapore. तो मतलब इस तरह से आप अपने बच्चों को डिफरेंट चीजों में, so I'm just saying we can involve our children in.
Right. So it gives them exposure. I mean, you're talking
activities
about
that are actually good for them.
Right.
Yes, that's all.
Okay. Thank you, Aruba.
Thank you very much. I have a chat question in the chat that asks, they'd like your guidance on their life circumstances. So I'll read as they've written it. So they start off by saying that at the beginning, I used to offer my salah regularly and askar, as well as getting connected with the religious deeds and acquiring the religious knowledge. But after coming through the difference of opinion of the respected Islamic scholars in various issues, especially in terms of parda, getting education from the opposite gender, and the sects of Islam, these three basic issues made a kind of hardship in my social and religious life, where they are not able to practice the muhakkam commandments, the salah, the zikr, and not able to focus on education, and became socially isolated at that moment. That way of thinking became indecent, vulgar, and they started to question themselves, what they were at the beginning of their maturity age and how they are now. So is there any kind of Islamic guidance and opinion on this insane issue?
Well, of course there is, and I think the person who is asking is exposed to the general opinion regarding parda, regarding women issues, and because of the fact that in general our traditional scholars, they have a very strict observance of certain directives, and they impose them on our women. And I have shown in my series, which is entitled, I think, Misconceptions about Women Amongst Muslims, that there are so many things which are either cultural, or they are misrepresentations of the Sharia, or they are misinterpretations of the Qur'an. And unless we are able to see a counter interpretation of many of these issues, we will continue to be bogged down. And I think that I would advise her that because Al-Mawrid has produced a lot of content on women literature, and both in the audio format and in the written format, so perhaps it would be advisable if she's able to go, or he's able to go through that content, because it gives you a different picture. It gives you maybe a counter narrative regarding women areas and women issues. And I do not blame the person who's asking this question, because yes, the overall situation or the overall interpretation regarding women and their role in religion or in the society in general is very bleak, the way it has generally been presented. As far as the Quran is concerned, it regards women to be equal to men as human beings. Yes, the roles are different, but then, as I said, there are misinterpretations which relate to culture, which relate to the nature of how you look at things. and we have made a lot of things which are just part of our culture, and we have raised them to the status of being something which is religious content. So I would just request her or him who is asking the question that if you could just have recourse to some of the content that we have produced in this regard.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our next question comes from Adil. Please go ahead.
Doctor, I've seen a few instances that there is a Friday prayer happening in a place which is not a Jame Masjid. It's not even a masjid for that matter. It's like a big open space where people would just put on the safs and people would gather to pray. Is that something that is permissible in Islam, to basically have a Friday prayer gathering not in a masjid but in an open space where people are just...
Well, you see, the right way in religion is that it should only take place in mosques where a religious representation, I mean, a representative of the state or the government is there to lead the prayer and to say the sermon. But because this is not happening since the past many centuries in most parts of the world, except in a few countries, so therefore now what is happening is that our scholars, they conduct Friday congregations in mosques, and then as a lesser form of that Friday prayer, there are areas in which, for example, the mosque could be very far off, or maybe people are at work. So what they do is they do a makeshift Jummah, so to speak. And well, I would say, I would not go against it, but I would definitely say that such people should try to go to a nearby mosque, because if you're talking about Pakistan, mosques are in plenty. I mean, every area is replete with mosques. So a recommendation would be that they should go to the nearby mosque, unless, of course, there is something very pressing or something which they cannot help. In which case, yes, of course, they should do what they're doing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Asif Ali, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Sab, my question is related to recitation of Quran and memorization. So, I mean, the traditional school of thought believes that recitation and memorization is really critical. I mean, but I mean, we were brought up in a society where memorizing the Quran and recitation is like linked to sawab or so. I mean, but the Frahi school of thought, or Javed Ahmed Ghamidi Sahab, has a different, basically view on that. So I just want to ask that, I mean, how, for example, if I ask my child to recite or to memorize because it will give her or him a sawab, but how I can basically make it like, what is the right view in that regard? Was it like I should focus on both, or sawab is like, I don't know how much and what is the return or reward?
I do get your question. I think this has been discussed a few times as well earlier on, but I'd just like to summarize what I've often replied to such a question. You see, what happens is that we need to understand that as far as reading the Quran or reciting it for sawab or reward is concerned, this is a erroneous notion. If you want to gain reward, then it's not going to come your way by reciting the Quran or by memorizing it. It is going to come by following the Quran. I mean, unless you follow what you have memorized or what you have recited, the reward is not going to come our way. So, but I've always made the suggestion that in order to connect ourselves to the Quran, we should have a long-term and a short-term policy. And both I will suggest here briefly, that as far as the short-term policy is concerned, or short-term learning is concerned, we should try to concentrate on just the translation. Just read the translation, whether it's our younger generation, whether our people of the elderly or the older generation. Because you see, in that way, they'll be able to read more of the translation and gauge more what the Quran says, understand its message, and try to follow what they have either gone through the translation or even memorized parts of the Quran. So this is a short-term, I would say, objective or short-term strategy that you can adopt to connect to the Quran. Long-term strategy is to learn Quranic Arabic. When I say learn Quranic Arabic, I'm not talking about just how to read the Quran without understanding it. I'm talking about learning the language of the Quran as you learn a new language. And if you concentrate on Quranic Arabic, I think it's all a matter of a year or year and a half, about 1 year, 1 hour per day for 5 days or 6 days a week. If you can take out time, there are now a lot of websites, a lot of apps that teach a person how to understand the Quran by learning Quranic Arabic, by understanding the Quran. So that should be a longer term goal. And all of us, we are mostly professionals in our own lives. And it's just a question of showing that will and determination. And all that is needed is that commitment. If you are able to get that commitment, that long-term goal can easily be accomplished in a year or so. And the short-term, until the time you're able to accomplish that long-term goal, the short-term goal is always there, that you immediately connect to the Quran by just connecting to it through a translation. The additional thing that you always gain when you study the Quran directly from the text, and you're able to understand the text, is that not only would you understand and not need a translation, it's the power of the Quran, or the force of the Quran. It's like God speaking, is so potent that the inspiration that you get to follow what has been told to you is instantaneous. You feel like following what you have just understood. And this is the power of the words of the Quran itself. And that can only come when you directly understand the Quran. So that is why I say that should be a goal, but that should be a longer goal. But until the time you achieve that goal, the short-term goal is to read the Quran with a translation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Adil Quraish, please go ahead.
So, Doctor, when you say the Arabic, you can just pick any website or any app or things like these. I tend to assume that what you're saying is that in order to understand Quran, any Arabic text or language, any Arabic resource that is teaching you the Arabic grammar and things like these would do.
That's a different thing. Let me let you know. You see, there are two types of teaching that is going on in various apps and websites. One is teaching the Arabic language. That has a much wider scope, and it takes years and years to get a feel of a new language. It's like learning a new language. I'm concentrating on Quranic Arabic. That's a subset of Arabic, and that takes a lesser amount of time. It concentrates on a bit of grammar, yes, but more on you are able to gauge the vocabulary, which is, of course, at times the classical vocabulary is different from the current vocabulary, but concentrating on the construction of the Quran. Because you see, when you start learning Quranic, Arabic in general, what they do is they just don't confine you to comprehension. They'll make you speak Arabic, they'll make you write Arabic. So speaking and writing Arabic is not the need when you understand the Quran. All that you need to do is comprehend the Quran. And for that comprehension also, you don't need to study the whole of Arabic language. You just need to concentrate on Quranic Arabic. And that is why I say that it's a shorter route to understand the Quran. And there are, I have referred to websites. Just Google these websites. You'll find apps, and so many websites they'll place you that how much you know already, and then from there on you can go forward and study the rest of the Quranic Arabic.
Right. So for the follow-up, I'll just switch over to Urdu. I'll be able to ask the question in a slightly better way. So इसी के से follow-up basically मैं कुरानिक अरबिक की अगर बात करूं तो कुरानिक अरबिक में मुझे ये लगता है कि जिस तरीके से मिसाल के तौर पे फराही साहब ने अरबी सीखी अपने जवानी के ज़माने में जब वो स्टूडेंट थे, या इस्लाही साहब ने सीखी, या गामदी साहब ने सीखी, आई वुड अस्यूम कि उन्होंने रेगुलर जनरल पर्पस किताबों को नहीं पढ़ा होगा जो कुरानिक अरबिक सिखाती हैं. उन्होंने कोई बड़े खास तरीके से सीखी होगी. वो मश्क और वो महारत बड़े एक खास तरीके से हासिल होती है. तो आप जब कहते हैं कि आप कोई भी किताब उठा लो या कोई भी वेबसाइट उठा लो, तो मुझे इससे लगता है कि क्या ये इज देयर एनी, क्या वाकई ये बात दुरुस्त है कि कोई भी किताब या वेबसाइट उठा लो, या वो
there are two levels. So one is the deep level of a researcher. We are not going to go into a deep research of the Quran. So that is the level which the persons that you've just spoken of, they had that level. They just are not scholars of the Quranic language. Quranic Arabic, they are scholars of the Arabic language over. The classical Arabic is something which they know very well. So that is the scholarly understanding of the Quran. And every common man, it's not the need of a common man to have a scholarly understanding of the Quran. It's just meant for scholars and researchers. So what I'm talking about is learning Quranic Arabic at just a translational level, in which you're just able to understand the basic message of a Quranic verse when you read it. So this is way different from what these scholars know. I mean, they are scholars of the language, they're scholars of morphology, they're scholars of linguistics, they're scholars of declensions. These are all subtopics of the Arabic language and grammar. So that is a scholarly understanding, and I'm not recommending that you go for a scholarly understanding. It's just that you just need to have a simple understanding of how the Quran speaks to you. And that, as I said, is something that you can do with a year or year and a half of hard work.
Right, sir. And so my last question, actually on the same topic, is I was trying to go through this ayah. So this is Surah Tur, ayah 13 and 14. يَوْمَ يُدَعُونَ إِلَى نَارِ جَهَنَّمَ دَعَى هَذِهِ النَّارُ الَّتِي كُنْتُمْ بِهَا تُكَذِّبُونَ. So هَذِهِ النَّارُ الَّتِي كُنْتُمْ بِهَا تُكَذِّبُونَ. I don't understand what is the word, what's the significance for having the word biha here? So isn't this هَذِهِ النَّارُ الَّتِي كُنْتُمْ تُكَذِّبُونَ would convey the same meaning? And what does
the word kazzaba has a preposition be. The ba is the preposition for the word kazzaba. I mean, just as the word, verb kazzaba occurs directly, it also occurs with the preposition. And a preposition does not give you any meaning. It's part of the verb. So kazzaba be is one thing. It's a single unit.
Okay, so I could not even have said the word without the be. So it's not an extra word. Be is a
It's
part
not,
of
it's
the
part of the verb. It's a preposition.
Okay.
That is what you call a sila in Arabic. It's a sila of kazzaba.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Dr. Saleem, we currently don't have any more raised hands. Any concluding remarks until then, Dr.
So
Saleem?
inshallah, we'll be meeting tomorrow, and tomorrow we'll be talking about the month of Ramadan, especially fasting, and this would be an introductory or a sort of an introductory lecture on the month of Ramadan, which is almost now a month and a half away, and so hope to see some of you tomorrow, inshallah.